following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 1, Listening and Speaking. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to identify and use a range of persuasive techniques. Learners should be able to interact in group discussions by expressing their own ideas and opinions and listening to and respecting those of others, while engaging with a range of issues such as inclusivity, power relations, environmental, ethical, socio-cultural, and human rights issues.
I need you to lend me 50 rands.
What for?
I cannot borrow money from someone, and that person wants that money now. You know, It doesn't matter, Cindy. So I just really need you to borrow me that money. You know, if you don't borrow me, man, I don't know. Maybe you'll see me tomorrow with scratches. You know, please, Cindy.
Why are you wanting that 50 rand so desperately?
As you've probably realized, today we're going to be talking about persuasive speech. There are many different techniques that can be used to persuade someone to do what you want him or her to do. These techniques are neither good nor bad by themselves, but the way that people use them and the intention behind them can be good or bad. In other words, an advert may play on your emotions to get you to be kind to animals. So, one could argue that here persuasion is being used to achieve positive intentions. However, a political speech that encourages people to discriminate against others is using persuasion with negative intentions. But before we go any further, let's make sure that we all understand exactly what persuasion means. Persuasion is the process of trying to change other people's beliefs or actions. Some people are or have been easily able to persuade others to think the same way as they do. However, the ability to speak persuasively is a skill that everyone can learn and improve. Also, being able to recognize persuasive speech means that you must be able to listen to what someone is telling you and judge for yourself if there is value in what they are saying or if they are just trying to manipulate you. Here are the outcomes for today's lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to list some persuasive speaking techniques, recognize when persuasive speaking techniques are being used. As you can imagine, the techniques of persuasive speaking can be extremely powerful ways of changing people's lives and the world for both good and bad. Here are some examples of situations where persuasive speech is often used. Discuss each situation and decide whether you think persuasion should be used. In some cases, you may feel that it isn't a moral issue at all, but rather just the way that people interact. In these cases, you can just label it unimportant. Here are the situations. A nursing sister explains the dangers of HIV/AIDS. She uses persuasive speech to persuade teenagers to be careful and responsible about sex. In this case, is persuasive speech being used in a positive way, negative way, unimportant way? Your best friend wants to watch a movie you are not interested in. He tries to persuade you to watch it anyway. In this case, is persuasive speech being used in a positive way, negative way, unimportant way? A salesman comes round to see an old lady without much money. He persuades her to buy a very expensive set of plates and cups that he can see she can't afford. In this case, is persuasive speech being used in a positive way, negative way, unimportant way? So, in which of these situations did you think persuasion was being used for what purposes? It could be argued that the nurse was using persuasion in a positive way, the salesman in a negative way, and the friend in a way that is unimportant or just the way that people interact with one another. We all should pay attention to the ethics of using persuasion, as it can often be self-serving. In other words, it benefits one person at the expense of others. For example, persuasive sales techniques can be used to convince someone to buy something that they don't need or can't afford. In this case, the seller makes money, but the buyer doesn't benefit. As listeners, when we are asked to change our beliefs, we should check that the speaker is using facts and sound logic. It is also the responsibility of listeners to think very carefully about what they are being asked to believe and do, and whether this is really something they want to do or believe in, or whether they are being manipulated. Well, that is some of the theory about persuasion and manipulation. But how does it work in the real world? Lawyers often use persuasive speech to persuade people that their client is in the right and the other person is in the wrong. Let's see what a lawyer, Zarina Kellerman, has to say about persuasive speech.
Let me start off by saying that I believe that your powers of persuasion are enhanced where you believe in the version of the story that you're putting forth to the court being a judge. Obviously, that depends on having evidence to back up that story. From the applicant's point of view, you need to concentrate specifically on the facts.
Zarina's comments remind us that it is much easier to argue something that you passionately believe in and have evidence to support. Using facts is one technique in the art of persuasion. Here are some other ways of persuading someone. The first is called appeal to reason. This is just a fancy way of saying that the persuasive technique is based on logic. For example, if you wanted to drop out of school, your friends might persuade you with logical arguments. They may tell you that there are only 3 months left until the end of the year, so you may as well complete the grade. Or they could remind you that the school fees have already been paid and you would waste the money if you left. These are sensible, logical, truthful arguments that would be difficult to argue against. The next technique of persuasion is to make an appeal to emotion. This just means that the persuasion is based on using feelings. If we continue with the previous example, your friends might try to convince you to stay in school by talking about how proud your parents would be when you got your matric, and how your little sister would respect you more if you finished the year. Emotions like pride and respect, sadness and guilt are very powerful feelings that can be used to persuade us to do something. The final technique used in persuasion is to appeal to someone's needs and desires. In other words, to convince people that what you are offering is something that they need or want. In our example, your friends could use the need to get a good job to persuade you to stay in school. They could appeal to your desire for a comfortable life by saying that with your matric certificate, your chances of finding a good job or being able to study further would be better. Your friends would use this desire to convince you that staying in school would help you to get what you want. Before we go on, let's list the techniques that can be used to persuade someone to do or believe something. You can persuade people by stating facts and showing evidence, appealing to their reason, appealing to their emotions, appealing to their needs and desires. We all hear examples of these forms of persuasion being used in advertising, political speeches, and during our interactions with friends. And just as you may use these techniques to persuade others, it is important to be able to evaluate how the speaker is trying to persuade you, so that you can make up your own mind about whether or not you want to believe what you are being told. To help you to think critically about what someone is saying, ask yourself the following questions. What is the speaker's goal? What are the main points? How does the structure of the speech help the speaker to make the argument? How does the speaker try to make you care? How does the speaker use evidence? Okay, let's see how this works. Listen to the following persuasive speech and see if you can answer the questions we have just listed.
By this time tomorrow, 7 people in South Africa who are alive right now will be dead.
Not because they were in a car accident, not because they were shot, not even because they were not in the hospital, but simply because they could not be given a life-saving transplant in time.
7 people will die because the organ transplant they need will not be possible.
But you have the power to save somebody's life by registering to donate your heart or lungs or kidneys if anything was ever to happen to you.
So, were you able to figure out which persuasive techniques were being used? What is the speaker's goal? The speaker wants to persuade us to become organ donors to help save lives. What are the main points? The main points are that everyday people die because they cannot get the medical help. How does the structure of the speech help the speaker to make the argument? The speaker uses repetition to make his point. How does the speaker try to make you care? The speaker uses an appeal to our emotions to make us care. He also uses the statistics that in South Africa, 7 people die every 24 hours because there aren't enough organ donors in the country.
By this time tomorrow, 7 people in South Africa who are alive right now will be dead.
So, did you think this was a persuasive speech?
Not because they were in a car accident, not because they were shot, not even because they were not in the hospital, but simply because they could not be given a life-saving transplant in time.
Did you believe the speaker about the importance of organ donation?
7 people will die because the organ transplant they need will not be possible.
Did it make you think about organ donation in a new way?
But you have the power to save somebody's life by registering to donate your heart or lungs or kidneys if anything was ever to happen to you.
Did it make you want to do something about the problem? In the example we have just looked at, persuasion was being used with positive intentions. But that is not always the case. With the right to speak, there is also the responsibility to be ethical about what you say and how you use your words to change our society. It is also our responsibility to listen to what people say and how they say it, to look for good messages, and to make sure that we don't become the victims of manipulation. Now it's time for our task. Imagine that you are in an aeroplane. Suddenly, the captain tells everybody that the plane is going to crash and there is only one parachute. In other words, only one person is going to be able to reach the ground safely. Your goal is to persuade everyone on the plane that you are the best person to get the parachute. List points you would use to persuade other people to give you the chance to survive. That's all for today. Join me for the next lesson when we will learn more about how language can be used to manipulate. See you then.